Hello, Bubs. You all know that Wolverine has always walked the line between hero and anti-hero. While he does a lot of good, driven by a heart as big as the great outdoors, he also has a fierce, animalistic rage. Over the years, he's been brainwashed multiple times as part of the Weapon X program, transforming him into the ultimate killing machine with unbreakable adamantium-coated bones. There's always been a fear that if this weapon fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be catastrophic. Well, that's exactly what happened. In today's video, we'll dive into the story of how Wolverine was brainwashed into joining Hydra and the journey to bring him back. We'll also explore a what-if scenario where Wolverine never recovered from Hydra's control. Plus, we'll take a look at the story of Wolverine's daughter, Laura Kinney, as she faced a similar fate. So, without further ado, let's get started. But before we begin, we have a small request. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channel. It's a small click for you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Wolverine, Weapon of Mass Destruction, Chapter 1. It was Nagasaki, Japan, and the month was October. Ichiro Yashida, the cousin of Mariko Yashida, Wolverine's dead fiancé, used to work as a chauffeur for a rich man. After the music class, his son and the rich man's son both went to play catch in the baseball field. No one was able to tell them apart. Same thing happened to the kidnappers. Instead of kidnapping the rich man's kid, they took away Ichiro's son. The kidnappers demanded $10 million, a hefty sum, even if it had been the rich man's own child. But for someone else's kid, he could do nothing but offer apologies. The police were no better. They took down some information but misspelled his name 3 times, and Ichiro realized he didn't have the influence to keep their attention for long. Days turned into weeks, and eventually the cops stopped answering his calls altogether. All Ichiro could think about was how different things would have been if it had been the rich man's child taken in that car. His son had vanished, abducted in broad daylight, but when the story made the news, all they talked about was the rich man. Wolverine came to Japan as soon as he heard. He'd got the $10 million and was about to make the exchange at a graveyard. He wasn't happy about coming back to Japan as all the memories with Mariko kept flooding back. The kidnappers only found dirty laundry when they opened the cash bags. Angry, they took out the guns and attacked Wolverine. Wolverine popped out his claws and cut them instantly. They were dead before they hit the ground. But little did Wolverine know it was an elaborate trap set out for him. For the next instant, he was attacked by a plethora of hand warriors, dead and expendable, up and about to kill him. As he fought them, he understood that the warriors weren't dead for over a month as their bones still cracked. He saw through them. One of the warriors approached Tommy Shishido, the Gorgon, reported that Logan was overpowering them, and they struck before it was too late. The Gorgon, calm and calculated, replied that he wanted to see what the Wolverine could do. He let him tire him out a little. Wolverine was a carnage. He decapitated the warriors, stabbed them with spears, popped his claws into their eyeballs, and methane gas and green blood oozed out of their bodies. He killed them all, and then got to the kidnapper boss, curled up his fist against his face and threatened to pop his claws unless he spilled where they'd taken the kid. Before he could do something, the kidnapper died. Surprised, Wolverine thought, how could someone be so quick? Then he realized that someone had moved up behind him and drove a blade through his spine and the kidnapper's gut smoothly, killing them both. It was the Gorgon. He introduced himself to Wolverine and said that he fed the kid to the pigs. He then struck him before he could heal. Wolverine swiftly drifted into blackness. A week later, Kitty Pryde visited the house of Ichiro. Ichiro and his wife were mourning their son. Kitty assured them that they would find the kid. They had psychics at their disposal. She asked about Wolverine as he was missing since the incident at the graveyard. Ichiro and his wife didn't have any idea, but Ichiro's wife insisted that her kid was dead, as their employer had already sent across his favorite things to commemorate him. A month later, Nick Fury and Elektra oversaw a S.H.I.E.L.D. team investigating the brutal massacre at a Minneapolis church by the Hand, where 2 priests, 3 nuns, and 8 fanatics had been killed. Fury informed Elektra that S.H.I.E.L.D. had recently uncovered a rather intriguing plot involving the Hand and HYDRA, a plan to eliminate Captain America, Tony Stark, Charles Xavier, and Reed Richards. He mentioned that these figures were highly valuable in the supervillain community, fetching 6 or even 7 figures, with Wolverine topping the list. Elektra admitted she had no idea who managed to take down Logan, given his reputation as a challenging target. Fury revealed that the culprit was known as the Gorgon, a mutant from Kyoto who had gained legendary status by transforming local gangs into mythos 15 years ago, and was resurrected by the Hand 3 weeks after his death. The Gorgon was a deadly ninja master, possessing superhuman strength, telepathic abilities, and the power to kill any mutant he touched. He'd once been part of a terrorist group before being elevated by the Hand, who had since turned him into one of their top agents, effectively hijacking XMen and Hydra Grandmasters. As they were leaving, a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent informed them that Wolverine had been discovered in South America. He was found burned up and lying in a ditch in Argentina. No hair, 1 eye, 90% of his body covered in burns. The ground team said he looked like hamburger meat. Nobody had any idea how he'd escaped his captors. Inside, a nurse took care of Wolverine as he slowly came back to his senses and gathered his thoughts. The nurse kept flirting with him and reminding him how sexy he looked in his biker gear. Suddenly, a voice spoke inside his head. "Killer, you have to get out of here." His eyes pointed in places in the nurse's body, and the voice said again, "Here is where you make the cuts. No mess, no fuss." As the nurse took care of him and Elektra and the soldiers made their way to the med bay, Wolverine knew that something was very wrong. The voice in his head now screamed, "Killer, you idiot! Your Hydra mission started the second your eyes opened." Wolverine stabbed the nurse through the chest and escaped. He was loose on board a SHIELD aircraft carrier. He cut out the electricity. As everyone went into panic, Elektra ordered the soldiers to get down. Smiling, she said, "He's here." Wolverine, sitting right above them, greeted Elektra and said, "Hello, sweet cheeks." Chapter 2. Inside the SHIELD aircraft carrier over the South Atlantic Ocean, the soldiers panicked and started firing, even when Elektra had told them to stand down. Wolverine slinged open his claws and the guns were cut like lettuce. As he massacred the guards, the voice inside his head kept telling him to shut up and stop apologizing to himself, to stop denying what he was. Elektra stood and watched. She was taking her time, studying Wolverine. As Wolverine tried to fight the voice in his head, it told him, "That's the way. Life is suffering forced upon us by a merciless god. Death is our only reward. Hydra has taught you well, little Wolverine." And right then, Elektra jumped and perched on Wolverine's back. She'd inserted her psi sticks in Wolverine's deltoid and paralyzed him. She calmly told Wolverine to let go and surrender. The voice in Wolverine's head called Elektra a treacherous little turncoat, a stupid little tracer, and a light-serving cow who had been trained by their left hand but assisted the enemies. Elektra tried to calm Wolverine down by explaining that the thoughts he was experiencing weren't his own. She told him that he'd been brainwashed by Hydra, but assured him that it was something SHIELD could fix. She emphasized that she wasn't there to kill him, but to help him, urging him to think twice if he was willing to cooperate. Wolverine smiled. It had been 15 seconds. His plan B was going to kick in. Suddenly, there was a huge blast in the carrier, resulting in a lot of casualties. Wolverine had been to the ammunition room before facing Elektra and had set up a bomb. Elektra couldn't hold her psi stick anymore, but she fought with extreme agility, even one Wolverine would shy away from. She inserted her sticks and gave Wolverine a bad throat wound, as messy as possible, which would take a long time to heal. Right then, a torrent of water rushed into the lower deck, taking everyone in its way. Wolverine thought that everyone else would be dead, their heads bashed around by 100-mile-an-hour waves, but Elektra always made it, clawing a way back from the grave. He swam into a hatch and locked himself up. Elektra swam behind him but found the doors locked. Then she found a radiation containment suit and she smiled. As Wolverine swam through the water, he watched the crew of the ship drowning and dying. His sane mental half wanted him to save them, but the Hydra brainwashing told him not to. As he was steered toward the blast hole in the hull, he saw a plethora of sharks teeming in and taking the crews away. The voice inside him said, "Kill them! Got a job to do, Wolverine. Hack at them. This was only just for starters. Get out of here and complete your mission. Hydra demands it." And Wolverine did just that. He massacred the sharks. Meanwhile, help came 50 minutes later. Elektra informed the soldiers that their security had been compromised and instructed them to contact SHIELD Command to determine if their system mainframe had been hacked. She explained that Wolverine had indeed breached their defenses, using deception to board the ship. She warned them that they'd not truly captured Wolverine. Instead, it was Wolverine who had found them. 24 hours later, Fury and Elektra reconvened with all the SHIELD officers. At the meeting, the SHIELD officers discussed the slim chances that Wolverine had made it out of the water, with one officer stating it was less than zero. Emma Frost had picked up brainwaves matching Wolverine's description less than 2 hours earlier, though the signal grew weaker the harder she tried to track it. The officers speculated about the involvement of a supernatural shield, included that the Hand was involved. Fury introduced Elektra Natchios, explaining that she was a freelance operative with some SHIELD connections, but more importantly, had a serious history with the Hand. Fury elaborated that the Hand was involved in assassinations worldwide and specialized in murdering opponents and resurrecting them as loyal assassins in their death cult. He emphasized that once the Hand brought someone back from the dead, they'd control them completely, and they'd done the same thing to Wolverine. Fury informed the other officers that their linguistics team had finally broken the codes found in the church a few days ago. It revealed that the mutants on the Hand's hit list weren't just targeted for termination, they were being targeted for reanimation. He explained that the Hand, Hydra, a Japanese mutant sect, were involved in this, aiming to bring the superpowered individuals over to their side. Fury emphasized that the superheroes were their biggest obstacle, and eliminating them would be like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. He then instructed them to put every superhero on red alert, evacuate all civilians from superhero bases, including cleaning staff and PR personnel, like those at the Baxter building. Fury also mentioned that the president was already on his way way to the Oval Office, and the Pentagon had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, and everyone was to be designated with a bodyguard. Elektra blamed S.H.I.E.L.D. for turning Wolverine into a weapon, noting that now someone else had control over him. And then, President's Air Force One landed on the roof pad. At the Xavier Institute of Higher Learning, Kitty Pryde hauled up all the mutant kids in a room protected with trip lasers. She told them that the bathroom was off limits, and that they'd been given bedpans. Then she came back and hauled up in a room with Storm. At the Baxter building, all the employees were sent home packing. Everyone left, and Sue Storm, in her intangible form, saw to the entire movement. Once the building was clear, she went inside. Ben was inside the central control room. Believing Johnny, Richard, Sue, and the kids to be safe, he activated the force field around the building. But Wolverine was already inside. In his mind, he spoke to Ben Grimm. 90% of accidents happen at home, bub. Chapter 3. Inside the Baxter building, Johnny Storm was fixing a car when Ben Grimm came to meet him. Wolverine was keeping watch from inside a hatch. Wolverine thought that only 3 people in the world could crack the Fantastic Four security system, and he was capable enough to do it within an 8-minute window. Maybe the security was top-notch, enough to be beyond even presidents and kings. His own experience and unique abilities made him one of the few who could pull off such a feat. He studied Ben from the hatch and deduced how to take him down. Meanwhile, at the Hydra base, Gorgon was getting impatient. He asked one of the scientists if Wolverine had lost his way, or did he require the Baxter building blueprint to be downloaded to his memory. The scientist replied that Wolverine was just doing reconnaissance, waiting for the right time to strike. He assured Gorgon that Wolverine's upgrades were working just fine. Wolverine's new accessories reworked the alarm system, so it doubled back and is recording everything that went down 20 minutes ago. He had 19 minutes to finish Reed. Something inside him reminded him that Reed was a friend, but he snubbed it. He remembered how Hydra killed him, resurrected him as their own agent, bolted his brain, and implanted the directive to bring back major superheroes who they would do the same to. And all of this was under the command of Baron Strucker. Sue checked in to see if Reed was coming up to read the kids a bedtime story. Reed, busy with a project in the negative zone, suggested that Sue read the story instead. Concerned that the children, especially Franklin, hadn't seen their father in 2 days, Sue insisted on Reed's involvement. Reed offered a pre-recorded message via the intercom, designed to replicate his voice and mannerisms so the children wouldn't feel disappointed. When Sue questioned whether she was speaking to the real Reed or just the synthetic personality, Reed reassured her that the synthetic personality would have given a pre-programmed satisfactory response, indicating she was talking to the real him. Richards himself was disconnected from his body and visiting a top-secret area of non-space he shared with Tony Stark and Dr. Henry Pym, where he was displaying his terraformer prototype which he wanted to deploy in Africa. Suddenly, there was a security alert. Reed understood that they were being hacked. He picked up Wolverine's gene signature in the data room. He commanded Ben, Sue, and Johnny to attack immediately and bring Wolverine down with maximum force. Property damage was acceptable. Ben threw Johnny's T-bird at the hatch and broke it. Wolverine was exposed. Johnny switched his flame on and pinned Wolverine to a wall. As Johnny intensified his flames, Wolverine struggled with intense pain, feeling his fingers burning through his meat and tendons, splitting lesions through his nerve endings, with his brain preventing him from using his claws. Johnny warned Wolverine to give up or face even more heat. However, Wolverine countered by using a verbal override command to initiate an emergency fire procedure. Fire extinguishing foam started spraying from all directions, and Johnny's fire was snubbed the next second. Wolverine popped out his searing claws and was about to gut Johnny when Ben struck the floor, breaking it up into pieces. The floor broke and both of them landed in the one below. Wolverine's senses started flickering, his heart telling him to give up. His sane thoughts pointed out how Hydra had chopped him up and turned him into a monster, just like those old spooks had done. They'd undone all of Charles Xavier's good work. Only Xavier had been able to see his potential. Only he had been able to look upon the monster and see the man crying inside. But his Hydra voice shouted at him, "Emberton, old cripple, drooling in his wheelchair. Shut up." All Xavier did was paper over the cracks. He got up again and shredded the cable into bits that Ben threw at him. Then he tore through Ben's shoulder, incapacitating him. Sue sent their kids 20 minutes into the future, hopeful that Reed would answer the distress call by then. As all the machineries and robots hauled upon Wolverine and tried to contain him, he tore through them all. But then, in a blink of an eye, he saw a stretchable skin. Reed had arrived, and he wanted to talk. He surrounded Wolverine within his elastic bubble of a body. Wolverine wanted to slash all he wanted, but couldn't get free. He contacted the Hydra base and ordered a space shift. He was teleported 60 feet away. He kept fighting the robots that came at him, but suddenly he couldn't catch his breath. Sue was there. She'd put 2 force fields on each of his lungs. Wolverine had attacked their house and threatened her family. He was fair game for her. Wolverine ordered the Hydra base to shoot for floor 79, east-facing corner, as he'd already disabled the force field. There was a huge blast that knocked Sue away. A Hydra car came up and picked up Wolverine. He was ready to escape wrecked the scene, but Johnny flew at him in his flaming avatar. Wolverine jumped up at him from the car, popping his claws. Even with his flesh burning, he ignored the pain and pushed Johnny into a gas station. There was a huge blast. When the paramedics arrived, a burnt-up victim told them that he was Johnny Storm. As they took him to the ambulance, the victim popped open his claws. It was actually Wolverine. Meanwhile, the real Johnny Storm came out of the rubble. The paramedics alerted the ambulance, but alas, Wolverine had killed the nurses and escaped. At the Hydra base, Baron von Strucker ordered his subordinates to reach out to AIM and develop weapons based on the radical ideas of Professor Richards that they'd acquired. He also directed them to contact the Hand, instructing them to intensify their infiltration of the superhuman community and to create 10 new super agents within the next 7 days. He ordered them to find Wolverine and bring him in. He was to be retooled and deployed to assault Tony Stark at the heart of the American banking industry. Hydra's secret bankroller was arriving at midnight, and Strucker wanted everything in order before she got there. Chapter 4. It was a massacre at Stark International. An agent informed Fury that Wolverine had killed Spider-Man, dug his body out of the rubble 20 minutes ago. The agent reported to Nick Fury that, according to eyewitnesses, Wolverine and approximately 100 Hydra agents had launched an attack on Stark International at exactly 10:27 a.m. Within the span of just 14 minutes, by 10:41, the attackers had overwhelmed security, thoroughly ransacked the facility, and destroyed all the critical files. Every defense program that Stark had been developing for the government had been compromised. He said that Wolverine brutally killed Spider-Man, had shown up to stop the attack. Then, when everything was over, Wolverine sat down and patted a stray dog. When they brought forth the alleged body of Spider-Man, Fury pointed out that it was actually the superhero named Hornet. He was sad that nobody remembered his name, even when he died in the line of duty. Elektra armed herself with a sword and surprised Fury. Elektra informed Nick Fury that Hydra had formed an alliance with the Hand. She explained that the only way to eliminate the potential terrorist threat posed by the corpse was to disconnect its brain from the spinal column. She then warned that unless they wanted to face another superhuman threat like Wolverine, they should stand back and watch their clothes, as things were about to get messy. Later, in New York, as Elektra trained herself, she thought about Wolverine, who had been missing for 5 weeks now. Elektra reflected on how Hydra couldn't have orchestrated their plans on their own, which is why they'd struck a deal with the Hydra Grandmasters and the Dawn of the White Light. She observed that all the extremists were working together under the command of Wolfgang von Strucker, who was desperately clinging to his precarious position within Hydra. Elektra knew who was in charge of the whole operation. It was Elsbeth von Strucker. Elektra knew that Elsbeth was one of the most dangerous and elusive figures in the world. Elsbeth's influence was vast and hidden, so much so that until 3 weeks ago, even S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't aware of her existence. That's how clever she was. According to the information, Elsbeth was 175 years old, involved with 4 kings and 3 presidents, and had been funding Hydra since 1957. Elsbeth was not just wealthy and powerful, she was also a Satanist, a chess genius, and an old friend of Madame Blavatsky. She was even suspected to be the mastermind behind some of the world's largest corporations and financial crashes. Strucker's position was dwindling as Elsbeth was pushing funds elsewhere. That's why Strucker was struggling with Wolverine and others. Elektra shuddered at the thought of what had happened if they got their hands on even 10% of the superhuman population. Her thoughts broke when she turned and saw soldiers of the Hand ready to take her down. Even when she was scantily clad and was barefoot on snow, she overpowered the Hand ninjas. She started decapitating them with a broken pipe and a sword, and ultimately killed each and every one of them. Then she called up Fury and told him that she chalked out 3 different ways to capture Wolverine. At the Xavier's Institute of Higher Learning, Kitty talked to Emma Frost regarding Gorgon as she went towards the Cerebra chamber. Emma recounted that the Gorgon had a twisted past, mentioning how he was involved with a friend of hers in Kyoto when she was only 12. By the time she was 38, he'd already become a lunatic. However, she emphasized that he was far worse now. Emma went on to describe how the group he was part of made the Brotherhood look nothing by comparison, even mocking Magneto. She explained that their motivations were not about replacing or enforcing a manifesto. They were simply anti-life, driven by a dark philosophy. Emma then hinted at the Gorgon's ominous origins by telling Kitty that she was lucky that she'd never heard the story of how he joined the Hand. While taking her place on the Cerebra seat, she revealed that Elektra had come up with a clever method to bypass the magical block that had been concealing someone's whereabouts. Elektra suggested gathering all their little precogs and amplifying them through Cerebra. While they might not be able to pinpoint where Wolverine was at that exact moment, there was a good chance they could figure out where he'd strike next. At Georgetown, Washington, D.C., Elizabeth Strucker had arrived. Baron Strucker Elektra observed her, felt jealous on how she didn't touch him, and became intimate with the Gorgon. When Baron told her his plans about Wolverine, Elsbeth laughed aloud, refuting it as the last gasps of an old man. She then went upstairs to make love to Gorgon and ordered Strucker to keep playing the piano. At New York, Captain America and Falcon took down one more Hydra cell. Captain asked Fury about Wolverine's whereabouts. Nick Fury remarked that Wolverine had blown up 3 banks and a credit union in a single afternoon, skewered 6 cops, and even released a gas bomb on a naval liner. However, what caught Fury's attention was the fact that ATM security cameras had captured Wolverine stopping an attempted sexual assault and helping the victim to her feet after brutally killing the attackers. Fury noted that this was one good deed for every 5 atrocities Wolverine had committed that week, questioned what Wolverine might be up to with this pattern of behavior. Captain America surmised there might be a good man left inside him somewhere. But right then, it was a complete blackout. A SHIELD agent reported that all 3 power stations serving central Manhattan had just gone down, confirmed to be Wolverine's doing. Wolverine had sent them a warning 30 seconds before setting off a low-yield electromagnetic pulse. It was escalating the attacks to a whole new level. Led by Wolverine, an army of hand ninjas marched toward Daredevil's pad while he was sleeping. Wolverine placed his fist on his cheek, ready to pop open his claws if Daredevil moved. Then he asked him where his bodyguards were. He told Daredevil that SHIELD thought they were only after superheroes, but they were wrong. Coldly, Wolverine said, "The Hand's been after you a long, long time." Chapter 5. As he held Daredevil at his mercy, Wolverine acknowledged his impressive abilities. Matt Murdock had been blind for 20 years, yet his remaining senses were heightened to extraordinary levels. Given Daredevil's brilliant training, his tutelage under Stick, his past relationship with Elektra, and his extensive battles with the Hand, Wolverine had nothing but respect for him. He stated that under normal circumstances, he'd have allowed Daredevil the courtesy of a prayer before attacking, but he was not the same person anymore. Deep down, Wolverine knew that although blind, Daredevil was an asset for the Hand. Meanwhile, Elektra had Wolverine on target from the next rooftop. Elektra told McGurk to call Nick Fury and inform him that Hell's Kitchen required all the backup teams and meat wagons Fury could gather. She made it clear that they needed every available resource immediately, as Wolverine had swallowed the bait. She fired her gun. The bullet tore through Daredevil's window but missed Wolverine. Daredevil kicked Wolverine into the wall and said, "Get out of my house, Wolverine!" As the Hand soldiers attacked, Daredevil took his swords and decapitated them. He knew they were already dead, as there was no heartbeat and they smelled like sausage meat. On the other rooftop, Elektra stood, bewildered, when she saw that she'd missed the shot. Moreover, she found the nozzle of her gun cut in half. Gorgon was there, and he said that he'd come to make an acquaintance. Everyone fired, but Gorgon moved like a shadow amongst them, and the SHIELD soldiers were hurt from the firing themselves. Gorgon informed Elektra that SHIELD was currently occupied, guarding 85 different targets and focusing on superpowered individuals capable of demolishing buildings. He mentioned that the nearest SHIELD unit was 18 minutes away, but by then, their meeting would be over. Then, he opened his shades and told Elektra to close her eyes. Gorgon's eyes glowed green with magic, and Elektra screamed, "No!" And in an instant, the remaining SHIELD soldiers turned into stone. Gorgon threw his sword at Elektra and offered her to settle the score with Hydra and Hand that very instant. Elektra caught the sword mid-air. She was combat ready. At Daredevil's apartment, Wolverine reflected on how many underestimated the importance of skill over power. He recognized that surviving on the streets required grit and determination, not just fancy gear or supernatural abilities. As he deftly avoided Daredevil's attack, he acknowledged that this was where Daredevil excelled, relying on his instincts and experience rather than relying on flashy tools or powers. The stick that Daredevil threw knocked down a handful of Hand soldiers. He reminded Wolverine that he was brainwashed. Wolverine thought Daredevil was the one brainwashed instead, sitting in the court all day long and trying to fight a corrupt system. He kicked him into the kitchen cupboard. He tried to carve Daredevil, but Daredevil caught his hands. Wolverine kicked him in the gut. Daredevil took up a dumbbell and hit Wolverine in the face. He lost his balance and fell on the sword of a Hand soldier. Daredevil cried out Wolverine's name in concern. Meanwhile, Elektra continued to attack Gorgon with the sword, but unfortunately, he dodged all her attacks and then broke the sword into pieces with his teeth. With the piece of blade left in his hands, Gorgon started stabbing Elektra, first in her ribs and then her hands. He pointed out that Elsbeth would give him Hydra once her worthless husband failed. They planned to use what Wolverine stole from the Baxter building and make every man free as they were in birth. He kept landing punches on Elektra. Wolverine was impaled through the chest at Daredevil's apartment. For the first time, his head was clear. Brainwashing subsided for a while. He told Daredevil not to come close and asked him to open his mask. At the Hand base, Elsbeth questioned why the subject wasn't responding to their instructions. Expressing concern over the lack of communication, Strucker explained that Wolverine's system had gone into shock and he'd already taken steps to resolve the issue, by contacting technicians and arranging for an immediate space shift to bring the subject in as quickly as possible. Not knowing how long his free will was gonna last, Wolverine gave Daredevil a message and instructed him to get it to Fury. He informed Daredevil that Hydra, the Hand, and a group called the Dawn of the White Light Mutants were all working together now. He explained that they were all part of the same plan, orchestrated by Strucker and his wife, Elsbeth. He revealed that their next target was the President of the United States the following night as part of Strucker's big finale. Despite the pain he was in, Wolverine emphasized that they were determined to use him to eliminate the President, no matter where they were hiding him. He said that Daredevil was the bait, and much information was retrieved from Reed Richards' hard drive, which was getting used. Wolverine had made sure that another superhero didn't get nabbed. He wanted to speak more, but he was shapeshifted out of there at that instant. Baron informed Elektra that Wolverine was back in the base, and he'd seen his men working on brainwashing him again. He revealed his plans, involving Wolverine killing the President to Elsbeth. Meanwhile, Daredevil treaded slowly to a broken window. He searched for the heartbeat of Elektra, was shocked to find that she was missing. Meanwhile, at the Hand base, a dead Elektra was being resurrected, same as Wolverine was. Chapter 6. Kitty Pryde scanned the entire Xavier Institute of Higher Learning for the signs of Wolverine, but he was nowhere to be found. She came to Rachel Summers' room, where she was chilling, watching the TV. Rachel wanted to keep her mind out of all the fuss. Also, she knew that Elektra was converted, and there were many little targets at the Institute. Rachel expressed doubt that the enemy would be able to carry out their plan involving the POTUS, considering the heavy security around the White House, including the presence of numerous superheroes. She mentioned that Captain America had assured them that the area was well protected. Kitty encouraged Rachel to get some rest, suggesting that she could ask Emma for help if needed. Before leaving, Kitty reminded Rachel not to trip the alarm when coming upstairs. As Kitty went away, Rachel turned and told Wolverine to be visible again. Wolverine phased in by her side. He'd taken Rachel hostage. Wolverine instructed Rachel to follow his orders carefully. He reminded her that Reed's Terraformer gadget was set to explode in 15 minutes and emphasized that if she did exactly as he said, he'd deactivate the device. If she messed with him, even for a second, with her psychic powers, the Institute would be destroyed. Wolverine explained to Rachel the concept of terraforming, describing it as the process of transforming a hostile environment into a livable space. He mentioned that Reed Richards built the device for use in extreme environments like deserts, the moon, or other planets. He implied a threat, suggesting the devastating impact it could have on Westchester if activated there. He also expressed that he wasn't afraid to die, stating that after all he'd been through, death might even be a relief. Wolverine's inner voice dismissed his remarks, telling him to stop feeling sorry for himself and to focus on the task at hand. With his implants that could crack any code, Wolverine manually overrode the Cerebra chamber and realigned it for Rachel. Rachel expressed surprise that he wasn't in Washington as planned to carry out the assassination of the president. Wolverine responded that he didn't need to be physically in Washington to complete the mission, referencing how Cerebra's technology allowed him to murder anyone from afar. He also implied that historical assassinations like JFK's didn't require direct proximity. Rachel, troubled by the situation, urged him to let it go. Wolverine then coldly rationalized by asking one man's life was worth more than so many others. He implied that the stakes were too high to abandon the mission. Meanwhile, at the White House, Fury and the agents discussed the kidnapping of another superhero with invisibility power. Captain America was sure that Wolverine would be there. At the Institute, Wolverine forced Rachel to use Cerebra, while Iron Man did surveillance from above the White House. As Rachel locked onto the president as a target, Wolverine fought his brainwashed psyche that made disgusting comments about Rachel. Snubbing down the programming, he ordered Rachel to give the president a brain hemorrhage. Suddenly, the terraformer in Wolverine's hand started to break apart into pieces. Rachel told Wolverine that she dismantled the machine telekinetically. She had the advantage of being plugged into Cerebra, which allowed her to read the mind of anyone on the planet, including Reed Richards, who had designed the terraformer. Wolverine had lost his leverage, was left with nothing. She hit Wolverine with a Phoenix Blast and alerted the rest of the X-Men. Meanwhile, Hydra activated the space shift, and Wolverine kept teleporting from one place to another, dodging the other X-Men. Rachel spotted him in the hangar, but before anyone could do anything, Wolverine took the X-Jet and crashed out of the building into the jungle. All the X-Men followed him into the woods, while Strucker assured Elsbeth that Wolverine would get out safe. Wolverine killed 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers. Then he slashed Havoc's chest and incapacitated him. Next was Beast, whom he stabbed with his claws. Word was already out. Captain America and Iron Man were on their way to the Institute. Next, Wolverine jumped at Kitty and Jean-Paul, aka Northstar. As Kitty used her powers, Wolverine phased through her and impaled Jean-Paul instead with his claws. Kitty screamed and hit Wolverine with a piece of wood. Cyclops Cyclops hit Wolverine with his optic blast, hurting him badly. Wolverine used his final jump, but couldn't go far. He was in a bad shape. He staggered toward the lake and cursed the day he took up the job to save the Japanese kid. Captain America spoke from behind. Wolverine, heal this. He hit Wolverine with his shield and knocked him out. When Falcon praised him, Captain America acknowledged with a simple, I do my best. He then took command of the situation, instructing the support team to bring people down to the area and gather plastic bags, indicating they needed to deal with the aftermath of the fight. He asked for ground reports. 8 SHIELD agents were down, with 4 injured. Havoc had sustained serious lacerations to his chest, but reassured everyone that medics believed they could patch him up again. But Jean-Paul was lost. Wolverine had killed him. All the heroes, including Kitty, gathered up in front of him and mourned him. Meanwhile, at the Hydra base, Elsbeth ordered Strucker to give her his ring. When Strucker hesitated, Elsbeth told him not to embarrass himself in front of the others. Strucker apologized and acknowledged that she was right, as always. He asked that in the future, people remember his achievements and ensure that Elektra succeeded where Wolverine and his other plans might have failed. Elsbeth replied that Elektra would succeed, as Gorgon had great ambitions for her. Meanwhile, Gorgon, surrounded by his followers, led a ritualistic chant, praising Hydra's immortality and vowing that Hydra would never be destroyed, even if a part of it were cut off. He and his followers declared their unwavering service to their master and their belief that the world would soon serve them as well. As Strucker whispered, "Hail, Hydra!" Gorgon stood in front of him with his sword, ready to behead him. At the SHIELD helicarrier, Captain America and Nick Fury discussed the situation regarding Wolverine. Captain America questioned what they were doing to Wolverine and why they were keeping him down there. Fury explained that they were keeping Wolverine sedated, and while they had considered killing him, they decided against it, since it wasn't Wolverine's fault. Fury also mentioned that Wolverine was carrying valuable intel on their enemy's plans, making it worthwhile to keep him alive and see if they could find anything useful while he was on the table. Fury expressed some sympathy for Wolverine, noting that he never seems to get a break. Captain America acknowledged this, agreeing that he could relate. They then discussed the broader situation, with Fury implying that things were getting worse now that the more extreme elements were in control. Captain America asked if Fury had a plan. Fury said that he had something better than a plan. They had got their little killing machine back. Wolverine, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Chapter 1. Tommy Shishido was an extraordinary child who spoke his first words at 2 weeks old, was walking by 3 months, and could read and write by his first birthday. By the age of 4, he was already recognized as one of Japan's top 5 painters, and by his 6th birthday, he composed an opera and attempted suicide for the 2nd time. At 13, Tommy created a mathematical formula proving the existence of God, discovered his mutant ability to turn people to stone with a glance, earning him the name, the Gorgon. Over the next 4 years, he led a mutant death cult called the Dawn of the White Light, conducting a series of terrorist attacks across Japan. By the age of 18, Gorgon sought something even darker, setting the stage for the next chapter of his life. 18 months ago, at Akamatsu, Japan, Gorgon trained blindfolded with hand soldiers. None of them stood a chance. He decapitated and beheaded them without even dropping a breath. Meanwhile, a hand ninja master told his disciple that the boy Tommy possessed an extraordinary mind and was the one they'd been waiting for. According to prophecy, Tommy was destined to deliver them from eternal death. Despite his ability to turn his enemies to stone just by looking at them, Tommy chose to fight with his eyes closed to prove that he could defeat them even without this power. Finally, killing everyone in his path, Tommy entered the hand base and stood in front of the ninja master. The master invited Tommy inside, addressing him as a little mutant, and asked why he'd come to see them. Tommy was surprised by the size of the place, as it seemed much larger on the inside than it appeared from the outside. The master dismissed Tommy's concern about the size of the place, urging him to focus instead on explaining why he sought an audience with the hand. Tommy expressed his desire to serve the master. The master questioned whether Tommy intended to impress them by killing all their guards. Tommy confidently stated that he was worth 1,000, even 1,000,000 of their guards. The master acknowledged Tommy's skill, but emphasized that the hand valued a cold heart, questioning if Tommy was ruthless enough for their purposes. In response, Tommy revealed that he'd killed his own mother, father, brothers, sisters, and his only real friend to prove that he had no fear, demonstrating his ruthlessness. The master remarked that ambition and dedication were 2 different things. In response, Tommy asked if the master wished to see his dedication to their cult, and then he surprised everyone by driving his sword into his own heart. While dying, he whispered, "Resurrect me." Elsbeth and Gorgon stood at Fussen, Germany. Elsbeth asked Gorgon why he never smiled, to which Gorgon responded by questioning why he should smile. Elsbeth pointed out that Gorgon had taken over leadership of the Hand within a year and replaced her husband as Supreme Hydra just 6 months later. There was no shame in feeling pleased with himself. Gorgon, however, dismissed the importance of titles, stating that only results mattered. Elsbeth mentioned that he'd lost Wolverine but had gained Elektra, along with capturing many other superpowered individuals within the first 72 hours of his leadership. She revealed that the sickly ones had high expectations from him, as they'd waited for him for 4 billion years. In New York, Johnny On, aka aka the Spot, a low-grade teleporter went to the alley behind St. Mary's to meet Slide, despite the curfew for the superheroes, but instead found that a brainwashed Elektra and Hand's soldiers had already killed Slide. As Johnny tried to scream, Elektra threw knives at his face, and then there was just darkness. At the New York University Medical Center, the heroes discussed the uncomfortable situation they were facing. Iceman said that S.H.I.E.L.D. had ordered them to disconnect Northstar's brain from his spinal column to prevent the Hand from possibly resurrecting him. Polaris questioned how the Hand could resurrect Northstar if he was going to be cremated. The doctor mentioned that they hadn't been able to perform the procedure for 2 days because the X-Men had taken time to contact Northstar's family. Iceman pointed out that Northstar had been murdered and that it was necessary to try to contact his family before the funeral. Mirage said that Northstar was their friend and asked the doctor to give them a minute to grieve. The doctor responded sarcastically, saying that they could take as much time as needed, reminded them that they were also dealing with an epidemic. Just as they were about to say a prayer, Elektra attacked them with the Hand soldiers, teleported away with Northstar's body. Meanwhile, at the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, Wolverine broke free of his containment as the doctors were trying to sedate him. He killed everyone in the vicinity when they begged him to stop, but he ultimately stopped as he was about to decapitate a lady. She smelled funny to him. She was pregnant. Suddenly, the doctor Wolverine had already killed appeared and recorded his observations. He said that Wolverine was in a simulation and not killing the pregnant lady was a progress above the other runs, where he'd already decapitated the lady 1,000,000 times. It was a method to break his brainwashing. Then they transferred him back to his original mental state. Suddenly, all the defenses of the helicarrier were hacked and the defenses went down. As Fury and the others looked outside, they saw a plethora of B-list superheroes approaching them, led by none other than Elektra. Fury connected to all points over the comm channel and said, "We got trouble." Chapter 2. 5 miles over Arkansas, the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier was attacked by hundreds of B-list superheroes. The crew inside had informed Fury that backup was already on the way and would arrive in 40 to 45 minutes. However, Fury responded that it wouldn't be of any use because the ship would go down long before the backup could arrive. He then instructed the crew to prioritize sending out a signal and to grab weapons for what was to come. They started shooting at every superhero who breached the deck. A resurrected Northstar pushed and pinned Fury to the wall and said, "Hello, Colonel. Remember me?" He stated, "I'm Northstar from the X-Men, but I'm really not very nice anymore." He then pointed out the chaos outside, saying, "You hear all those bangs and screams out there? That's everything you've built going up in flames. That's the sound of S.H.I.E.L.D. dying." He promised that he and Elektra were going to make it quick and punched Fury hard into the ground. The doctors tried to get Wolverine out of the machine he was bound to. Meanwhile, the other superheroes tried to break in through the door of the room where Wolverine was located. Inside, the crew expressed disbelief, asking if the doctor was nuts for waking up Wolverine, calling it an automatic death sentence. The doctor acknowledged the danger, but insisted that they were all going to die anyway, and this might give them a chance. Another crew member pointed out that Wolverine was still one of them, even though he'd been brainwashed by Hydra. The doctor reminded them that Wolverine would still be in the danger zone for another 12 hours, asking if anyone had a better idea. After the doctor confirmed that Wolverine was disconnected, he instructed them to kill the lights. The brainwashed superheroes walked into the chamber. They smelled something fishy. Slide was the first one to go down, then Shock and Vibro, then Poison and Spot, and then Leapfrog. Everyone was bloodily carved up while the doctors watched in horror. Wolverine escaped out onto the deck and took down 2 other superheroes. In the middle of fire, smoke, and death, 3 superheroes went into the elevator. They planned to request for evac, as they were sure that Wolverine had slaughtered them all. And they were right. When the elevator reached the destined floor, S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers found their bodies carved up by Wolverine. Wolverine, in his berserker rage, had arrived. He took on all the superheroes by himself, carving his way out of them toward Northstar and Elektra, who was beating Fury into a pulp. Northstar pointed out to Fury that his knight in shining armor had arrived. Wolverine warned Northstar to leave the people alone or he'd cut him down again. In response, Northstar taunted Wolverine, saying, "Come on then, runt, let's try and get it right this time, huh?" But as they were about to fight, the helicarrier engines gave way and it crashed, causing a huge number of casualties on board. At a Hydra safe house in Germany, Elsbeth and Gorgon discussed the aftermath of their attack on S.H.I.E.L.D. and their ongoing plans. Elsbeth questioned the significance of Wolverine's involvement, but Gorgon dismissed it, noting that even if Wolverine survived the destruction of the helicarrier, their extensive sabotage of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s infrastructure would leave their agents in disarray. Gorgon then assured Elsbeth that their plans were progressing smoothly. They destroyed key command posts and backup stations, leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. weakened and leaderless. He mentioned that in 3 weeks they'd unleash a powerful arsenal on the world, which they smuggled out of Wakanda. Gorgon also admired the terrifying brilliance of Reed Richards' ideas, which were stored on a disk they'd acquired. Gorgon expressed curiosity about whether Reed Richards might be a mutant due to his exceptional intellect, but Elsbeth clarified that while Hydra had detailed records on all mutants, Richards was simply an extraordinarily gifted individual. Reed's mind was like a bird capable of mimicking human behavior. He was a threat to them. Finally, Gorgon instructed Elsbeth to inform their allies in the White Light organization that it was time to reveal themselves. At Arkansas, the devastation caused by the attacks was immense. Nobody had even tallied the dead, but it was clear the numbers were in the hundreds, countless S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel among the casualties. Nick Fury himself had been impaled with a pole through his ribs, yet he was expected to recover and resume command soon, being a tough old bird. Elektra and Northstar, however, had disappeared without a trace. It was no surprise that they weren't found. Rescue crews reported the grim news in bulletins. S.H.I.E.L.D. bases had been taken down across England and Germany, with 6 stations falling in a simultaneous attack. Wolverine's mind was back. He didn't have any idea who to call. All of this had happened because of him. The first person he called was Ichiro and told him the truth. His son was kidnapped and murdered so that Wolverine's enemies could capture and brainwash him. Ichiro was infuriated. Wolverine vowed vengeance, stating that those responsible would pay for what they'd done. He swore to Ichiro that he didn't care how many people he had to kill to make them pay. Ichiro told Wolverine that it was all his fault. He killed everything he touched. Fukuko spoke to Wolverine, apologizing for her husband's outburst, explaining that he couldn't accept their son's death until Wolverine's call confirmed it. She expressed that this confirmation had been very painful for them both. Fukuko then requested that Wolverine return their child's body so they could give him a proper farewell. She also mentioned Wolverine's earlier offer to seek vengeance, urging him to follow through. She explicitly told him that she wanted him to inflict pain on their enemies like no one had ever suffered before. Wolverine listened in silence. After the call finished, Dr. Weinberg went into Wolverine's tent while he was putting on his costume and getting ready to kill. Weinberg expressed concern that Wolverine wasn't in any condition to carry out his plans. Wolverine, however, was focused on gathering information, asking how many people were active in Hydra and the Hand. Weinberg estimated around 49,000 Hydra agents and 1,800 people in the Hand. When Wolverine inquired about the dawn of the White Light, Weinberg estimated their numbers to be between 500 and 600. Wolverine acknowledged the total, calculating roughly 52,000 enemies in all. Weinberg, realizing Wolverine's intention, incredulously asked what he planned to do, whether Wolverine intended to take on all these enemies single-handedly. Wolverine put on his mask, turned around and said, "Bingo." Chapter 3. As Wolverine waited, he reflected on the aftermath of a superhuman moving at Mach 3, knowing that the body would explode like a watermelon, making identification impossible. He considered how the cops couldn't find enough remains to fill a plastic bag. The murders had been committed by Northstar, who had killed 25 people across 16 states within 25 hours, moving so fast that nobody saw him coming or going. Wolverine realized the only clear thing was that Northstar was heading toward the Hand, the dawn of the White Light, a death cult formed by Gorgon. The cult was wreaking havoc, targeting random people that Northstar had issues with, taking advantage of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s weakened state. The only pattern visible in Northstar's killing was that he'd killed a few people who had marked him unfit for teaching due to his lifestyle. Wolverine felt pity for him, acknowledging that the deaths weren't his fault. He'd been manipulated and raised by the Hand. The fault was his own. That was why he decided to give Northstar a second chance, while making up his mind to gut all of Northstar's friends. Wolverine entered a bar where Northstar was having a drink. The Hand soldiers were also present there, having killed everyone at the bar except for the bartender. Northstar mocked Wolverine, mentioning that they'd heard he'd become S.H.I.E.L.D.'s whipping boy, trying to spoil their fun. He sarcastically asked Wolverine how he managed to track them down. Wolverine said that Northstar had always been a B-lister at best, even when they were part of Alpha Flight. He simply offered Northstar the same chance he got. He pointed out that Northstar's thoughts were being manipulated by Hydra's brainwashing. Northstar retorted that the real brainwashing was the ideals Xavier instilled in them at the school, which he dismissed as guilt trips and impossible aspirations. He admitted to being much happier now, even after becoming a killer under Hydra's influence. Northstar asserted that he was finally doing what was in his nature, rejecting the morality imposed by society and religion. He claimed that Hydra simply reminded him that everyone is just an animal at heart, a concept Wolverine should understand better than anyone. Wolverine countered, saying that animals don't have a conscience, implying that if Northstar were truly just an animal, he'd already be dead. Northstar dismissed any notion of redemption or charity from Wolverine, indicating he was fully committed to his current path. He told his guy Sparks to play music. While the music played, Wolverine approached Northstar. He pointed at another guy and asked if he danced. Northstar replied that he was a teleporter. To Wolverine's surprise, Northstar was teleported to a distance while hundreds of Hydra soldiers and resurrected superheroes jumped on Wolverine, and Northstar ordered them to make a mess. Dr. Weinberg questioned the S.H.I.E.L.D. crew about Nick Fury's condition, but they quickly redirected the conversation to focus on Wolverine. The crew expressed concern over Weinberg's decision to authorize Wolverine's release without proper clearance from Acting Commander Dugan, reminding him of the dangerous mutant they were dealing with. Dr. Weinberg attempted to downplay their concerns, asking them to relax and assuring them that Wolverine would be fine. However, the crew sharply reminded him that Wolverine had been public enemy number 1 for 3 months, and that his re-education had never been completed. They emphasized that Wolverine was now the most dangerous mutant in the world, a killing machine, and expressed alarm at the current state of affairs. S.H.I.E.L.D. had been shattered, superheroes were panicking, no one had any idea what Hydra was planning with their new super weapons. Dr. Weinberg responded to the crew's concerns by suggesting that a crazy little psychopath like Wolverine was exactly what they needed at the moment. He acknowledged their anger over his decision to release Wolverine, but hinted that they'd be even more upset when they found out what Wolverine had asked him to sign off on. Wolverine woke up at a Hydra safe house. Captured, Northstar taunted Wolverine, questioning if he was curious about their location, which turned out to be an isolated oil refinery in Alaska. He sarcastically mentioned how they enjoyed the peace and quiet, allowing them to go on killing sprees whenever they wanted, thanks to teleporters. Northstar then brought up Wolverine's revenge kick and made it clear that they weren't going to sit back and let Wolverine hunt them down for killing a child. Wolverine, bleeding, demanded to know the location of Gorgon, offering Northstar a chance to walk away with only a flesh wound if he complied. Eventually, Northstar relented, revealing that Gorgon was working with AIM, strip mining a hard drive they'd stolen and using the information to build deadly machines. He chillingly outlined their plan: to kill superheroes first, then kings and presidents, before unleashing a global terror unlike anything the world had ever seen. They started beating up Wolverine when suddenly Elektra detected a gadget in Wolverine's neck. Wolverine said that the gadget was suppressing Wolverine's mutant gene because he didn't want to get stomped. To all of their surprise, 3 Sentinels homed in on their location and started stomping on them. The Sentinels had been stored, and Wolverine had Weinberg sign off the forms to deploy them. Northstar, space bomb and gas to take out a target on the left, while instructing Sparks to try and disable the Sentinels' electrical systems. Sparks successfully fused the CPU, but he wasn't sure how much longer he could maintain control over it. Meanwhile, inside, Wolverine let his Berserker rage kick in. He started gutting all the heroes in sight. Northstar broke through the head of one of the Sentinels, but another one blasted him. As Northstar fell from above, burning, Wolverine took out another superhero. The Sentinels picked up the superheroes and crushed them in their hands, while Wolverine went to have a talk with Northstar. He offered a chance to take Northstar without hurting him. In return, Wolverine demanded that Northstar reveal the location of Hydra's supreme commanders and where they were building the machines Northstar had previously mentioned. As Northstar was about to say, "Kiss my," Wolverine face-punched him down to the ground. Wolverine reported to the S.H.I.E.L.D. command that he had Northstar wounded and needed urgent medical assistance. He provided his location, indicating that he was outside an Alaskan oil refinery, likely on the Kenai Peninsula. The crew was shocked when Wolverine ended the communication by saying, "Over and out, S.H.I.E.L.D. command." Coming out, Wolverine ordered Sentinel-1 to destroy the remaining enemies until nothing was left of them but blood and paste. He then instructed Sentinel-2 to give him a ride, indicating that they were going to search for the Hand together, and then rode the Sentinel toward the Hand base. Chapter 4. While Wolverine flew with the Sentinel to the Hand base, he reflected that most people knew little about them, and those who thought they did were often wrong. The Hand's origins were rumored to date back 4 billion years, with their founding fathers still alive today. No one truly knew where the Hand came from, but it was clear that what they worshipped was not good. The Hand had a mission that had taken various forms over the years, but the underlying goal always remained the same: to dishonor God by destroying what he had made. Their mission was brutally simple: to destroy everything, including friends, enemies, and anything they encountered, all in honor of the beast they served. Wolverine reached the Hand's secret training city, hidden in a forgotten forest and only visible to the outside world for 13 minutes after dawn. He had to kill 100 people to discover the location of this city, and he'd kill many more to achieve his mission. Hundreds of Hand soldiers stood in battle against Wolverine, lucky that he wasn't alone. The Sentinel broke through the wall and flew over the soldiers and burned them with its hand jets. The S.H.I.E.L.D. workshop had made the Sentinel so powerful that it could do whatever it wanted, just like a Swiss Army knife. It could track ninjas instead of mutants and would do whatever Wolverine told it to. Despite its original design to combat powerful mutants like Cyclops, Iceman, and Jean Grey, Wolverine recognized that the Hand soldiers were no match for it. As Wolverine fought hundreds of Hand soldiers atop the Sentinel, they inserted all their swords into the waist of the Sentinel and cut through the metal and made the Sentinel crash on the ground. Wolverine was bewildered by their resilience. Wolverine watched the Hand soldiers getting back on their feet quickly as 100 bows were drawn. They weren't even breathing heavily. Wolverine charged into their ranks, using their bodies as shields against the arrows. As he fought, he thought about Ichiro's son, Rikuto, a normal child with simple joys like collecting birds' eggs and watching his favorite TV shows. Wolverine thought about how Rikuto's life had been taken, lamenting that the boy could still be playing baseball if it weren't for the chaos brought by these enemies, not for himself. He kept reminding himself that his enemies didn't stand a chance. After killing all of them, Wolverine walked over their corpses and reached the Hand chamber. He was bid welcome by the Hand Master. He walked towards him, past the other soldiers. The Hand Master welcomed Wolverine to the secret city, assuring him that he had nothing to fear for at the moment. The Master said that while his brothers had forgotten the desire for speech, their ears still worked well, and they were aware of why Wolverine had come, finding it amusing. Wolverine, unfazed, declared that their amusement wouldn't last long, and popped out his claws. The Master called him a brave little fool for thinking he could survive the encounter. He revealed that the Hand soldiers were veterans of the oldest war, and had been taught the darkest aspects of their talents. Wolverine demanded to know where the Gorgon was, threatening to burn the place to the ground if they didn't comply. The Master mocked Wolverine's threats, questioning what he'd used to destroy them, and dismissing his technology as insignificant. He informed Wolverine that if he sought the Gorgon, then he needed to look no further than the death in his cities and the fear on every face. The Gorgon now led Hydra, wielding infinite resources, but Hand had a queen, the one and only Elektra. The Hand Master explained that Elektra had been groomed in the ways of their mystery school, but had initially failed to complete her education when they first trained her. However, after they won her back and she'd rapidly risen through their ancient rituals, she was now ready to take her place and rule from the east, just as their other prized student would destroy them from the west. Finally, the Master commanded her to execute Wolverine as they posed to kill each other. Elektra telepathically talked to Wolverine as his mental defenses were down. She told him that they didn't have much time. She instructed Wolverine to take the ones on the left while she took out the soldiers on the right. Wolverine was bewildered, but he complied. Both of them killed the Hand Master and then cut through the horde of undead soldiers. Wolverine screamed that there were hundreds, it wouldn't work. Elektra instructed him to enjoy the killing as much as he could. Both of them did. When they finished, the entire Hand had been obliterated. Wolverine told Elektra that he thought she'd been murdered and raised from the dead by the Hand, and that she'd possibly switched sides. Elektra said that she had been killed and resurrected by the Hand before, too. Hell held few surprises for her now. She revealed that she'd been in deep cover for the last 2 months, despite the extreme circumstances, including helping crash a helicarrier that resulted in the deaths of over 200 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Elektra didn't blow her cover. Her infiltration of the Hand had not only allowed her to dismantle dangerous assassins, but also to uncover 7 secret locations where Hydra had been building superweapons. She assured Wolverine that she knew where the Gorgon and his people were hiding. Wolverine, understanding the gravity of her mission, called S.H.I.E.L.D. Command for a pickup at a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. hospital. An agent informed Fury what had happened. Even in pain, Fury smiled. As they were boarding the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicopter, a soldier asked Wolverine if he was okay. Wolverine smiled and replied, "I think I'm in love." Chapter 5. 2 months ago, in a serene psychic therapy session, Emma Frost facilitated a group discussion among a few of the X-Men. Kitty Pryde expressed her deep regret, blaming herself for the death of Northstar. She believed that if she hadn't phased out during the critical moment, Northstar wouldn't have died. Emma reassured her, pointing out that Kitty would have likely died too if she hadn't reacted the way she did, emphasizing the futility of what-ifs. Beast confessed to feeling like an idiot for following orders and not using his immense power to prevent a tragic event. However, he also acknowledged that anyone in their situation would have been equally overwhelmed by the chaotic circumstances. One really didn't know how to react until Wolverine breathed on their neck. Emma further emphasized that there were countless possible outcomes from their previous encounter with Wolverine and Rachel. She compared trying to place blame on themselves to blaming the ancestors of a notorious figure for that person's decisions, illustrating how absurd and unproductive such guilt could be. Bobby Drake, reflecting on Wolverine's situation, expressed his concern about the immense guilt Wolverine must be feeling after being deprogrammed from Hydra's control. He sympathized with the torment that must be eating him alive. Rachel then asked if Wolverine was still frequently calling and hanging up on Kitty. Kitty, with a sense of pity, remarked that the poor guy just couldn't find the words to express himself. At a S.H.I.E.L.D. emergency outpost, Dr. Weinberg approached Wolverine, noting that he seemed a bit less deranged than before, and inquired whether he felt better after killing so many people. Wolverine replied that he didn't feel particularly better. He reminded Wolverine that revenge never brings happiness. He inquired about a planned raid involving Elektra and others targeting the Gorgon, who was hiding in a Hydra safe house. He suggested that if their cards were played right, Hydra could be taken down by midnight. Wolverine confirmed that this was indeed the plan. When Weinberg asked why Wolverine was hanging around instead of preparing for the raid, Wolverine mentioned that he was checking on how Northstar's deprogramming was going, comparing it to the process he himself had undergone. Weinberg concluded by acknowledging that while Northstar's deprogramming was still in progress, Wolverine's deprogramming had actually worked. While visiting Northstar, Weinberg explained to Wolverine that the idea behind the deprogramming was theoretically sound, involving countless simulations where the brainwashed subject would commit atrocities until the associated rage was purged from their system. While it took Wolverine only a few days to recover, Northstar had been subjected to the process for over a week without success. The screen showed that Northstar was still struggling, indicating the method wasn't working as effectively on him. When Wolverine questioned why the process worked for him but not for Northstar, Weinberg admitted they didn't know the reason. Perhaps it was more difficult for Northstar to come to terms with the fact that he'd been murdered by a friend. As Wolverine prepared for his upcoming fight with Hydra, his mind wandered back to a harsh lesson from his past. He recalled how special Special Forces used bunny duty to toughen up their recruits, forcing them to care for a rabbit only to later kill and eat it. This brutal task wasn't just about survival. It was a way to teach soldiers to switch off their emotions, to become less human, and do whatever it took to complete the mission. Wolverine reflected on how this exercise was designed to desensitize them, to make the act of killing easier. He remembered how he himself had learned to shut down his feelings, something he did again now as he steeled himself for the fight. Wolverine coldly acknowledged that he'd killed 5,000 and there were 47,000 more to be killed. He'd switched off his emotions once again. He turned off Ichiro's little kid, ready to do what needed to be done. In their briefing, Special Agent Dum Dum Dugan stood in for the hospitalized Nick Fury as he prepared Wolverine, Elektra, and the SHIELD operatives for their mission. Dugan explained that Elektra had provided intel pinpointing all 7 Hydra death factories across 6 different countries. These factories were where Hydra was building their doomsday weapons, using designs derived from Reed's notes. Wolverine asked if they were planning a surgical strike, to which Dugan clarified that the mission was much more than that. Hydra was planning an extinction-level event, so they had to respond in kind, implying a full-scale assault. Elektra confirmed there'd be no other superheroes assisting, as there would be bloodbath ahead. Dugan then questioned Wolverine and Elektra if they fully understood the gravity of what they were being asked to do. Both responded without hesitation, with Wolverine making it clear that he had no issues with the high casualty numbers expected in the mission. Wolverine remarked on the new technology they were about to use. He couldn't wait to use them. He acknowledged that SHIELD agents were uneasy around him, which was understandable given his past under Hydra's control, where he'd killed hundreds of their colleagues. Dugan reflected on how Fury had spent 50 years fighting Hydra, only to be hospitalized now when they were close to ending the threat. Wolverine, with his usual grim humor, promised to take good pictures for Fury. Hydra's doomsday plan involved the use of a massive 200-foot killer android named Null, originally designed by Reed Richards to combat beings like Galactus. This terrifying weapon, capable of devouring planets, fell into the hands of AIM, who intended to use it for their destructive goals. However, the real threat lay in the fact that Null was just one of 8,000 similarly devastating ideas stored on the hard drive they'd acquired. Each of these ideas had the potential to destroy cities, continents, or even planets with a simple command. Recognizing the immense danger, SHIELD resorted to using the most dangerous assets they had, notorious supercriminals. These criminals, eager to reduce their sentences, all attacked the AIM base to dismantle their plan. At their Hydra base in Manhattan, Gorgon and Elsbeth talked about the true nature of their organization's goals. Gorgon asked Elsbeth if she feared him, to which she responded that everyone did. He explained that the weapons they were building were part of a broader plan, a strike against the light, against God himself. Elsbeth expressed concern that the actions of new Hydra, under Gorgon's leadership, might be seen as cruelty, although she believed their intentions were pure compared to the past. Gorgon, however, dismissed these worries, suggesting that others would never appreciate the purity of their agenda, as they were only concerned with power and empires. Gorgon then revealed that he wasn't interested in convincing others of his ideals, but merely in showing them who they were working for now. But just then, Gorgon sensed something was wrong. Just as Elsbeth received news that their European bases were under attack, suddenly there was a blast, and the entire base caved in. As Gorgon came to his senses, he saw that Elsbeth had been crushed beneath the rubble. She died. SHIELD choppers above confirmed the hit and requested to beam in the Alpha team. Wolverine and Elektra teleported in and directly engaged Gorgon. They deployed the psi blockers to prevent Gorgon from reading their minds and fog out his thoughts. Then they gutted him with swords and claws. However, Gorgon picked up a giant beam and knocked Elektra out, as well as her side blocker. He then started beating the crap out of Wolverine with the beam, so fast that Wolverine couldn't even react. He was surprised how much power Gorgon packed. The SHIELD crew informed Dugan that Hydra's plants in Amsterdam and Brussels had just been destroyed, and suggested he take a look at what the Rhino was doing to their factory in St. Petersburg. Dugan, clearly displeased with the situation in New York, ordered the crew to have Beta Team ready to deploy as soon as he gave the command. Meanwhile, Gorgon had massacred the entire SHIELD Alpha team. He decapitated them and approached Wolverine and then nailed him to the wall with a sword through his neck. Alpha team was down, SHIELD was beaming out the injured and sending in the second wave. Gorgon took the chance. He approached Elektra and read her mind. He knew where Fury was. As Elektra was beamed out, Gorgon also teleported with her. At the top-secret SHIELD hospital, West 24th Street, the soldiers readied themselves to face a security breach. Wolverine, wounded at the fallen Hydra base, informed the soldiers that Gorgon had turned their plan upside down on them. He alerted everyone that Gorgon had gone to kill Nick Fury. Just then, Gorgon appeared with Elektra at the hospital. Chapter 6. At the Manhattan base, the SHIELD soldiers worked together in pulling out the sword out of Wolverine's neck. Ultimately, they were successful. Wolverine informed them to call the base and get as many super agents to the infirmary as possible, as Gorgon was going to kill Nick Fury. Then, he teleported towards the SHIELD infirmary. Gorgon held Elektra in SHIELD's secret New York City infirmary, marking that it was amusing she was also taking money from the Vatican. He said it made perfect sense that Hydra would seek to destroy everything created by God, which naturally led to them requesting his immediate assassination. Gorgon pointed out that their conversation was happening in a mostly silent manner, with thoughts moving at the speed of light. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents had barely registered that they were there. As the soldiers opened fire, Gorgon blocked the bullets with his sword and hurled them back at the soldiers, killing them. Wolverine teleported 10 blocks short of the infirmary. He was frustrated with the hunk of a junk teleporter. He kept jumping forward, reiterating his destination. However, his progress was slow. Meanwhile, Gorgon was decapitating Fury's guards. Dugan urgently contacted Wolverine, questioning why he was wandering around New York instead of heading to the infirmary, where they needed all available help. Wolverine, using a teleporter to move quickly through the city, found himself 5 blocks off target. Frustrated, he realized something was wrong with the device, likely due to interference or a previous hit it took. Determined to reach his destination, Wolverine adjusted his course and pushed the teleporter to get him directly to the infirmary, while cursing the malfunction. Gorgon confronted the S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers in front of the infirmary. He taunted Fury, asking if he could hear the wolf outside the door. Fury ordered the agents to shoot. Gorgon said that even if they could shoot him, he wouldn't feel it. Saying that, he opened his shades and looked at them, turning them into stone. Gorgon declared that if one head of Hydra was cut off, 2 more would take its place. No matter how much they fought, Hydra would always rise again. He cut off the heads of the statues of the agents. Finally, he stood over a helpless Nick Fury, menacingly promising to make Fury's death a nice, clean cut as he prepared to strike with his sword. Right then, Wolverine beamed in. With his jetpack primed at 90 miles an hour, he took Gorgon and took him through the window of Fury's room. He immediately had respect for Gorgon. He recognized that Gorgon was a Superman and was badass to the core, seemingly unstoppable no matter what Wolverine threw at him, whether it was knives, bullets, gas bombs, or even chainsaws. Despite being knocked down, Gorgon always got back up. Wolverine knew he had to go all out, using his claws to their full effect, aiming to take chunks of flesh off Gorgon to slice through his defenses. He realized there was no time for anything fancy, just sheer brutal efficiency. He chided himself for attempting to fight on Gorgon's terms and instead focused on locking their blades and finding a way to outmaneuver his opponent, knowing that brute force alone wouldn't be enough to take down Gorgon. He slashed at him with his claws, while Gorgon cut him with his sword. Wolverine jumped close to him and inserted his claws on both sides of his ribs. Gorgon also drove his sword through Wolverine's chest. Wolverine's left lung gave in. He started choking on his own blood. Gorgon threw Wolverine at the wall. Gorgon taunted Wolverine as he started beating him into a pulp. He said that all of Wolverine's recent efforts had been futile. Despite his actions, all he'd accomplished was to destroy a few bases that were inconsequential to Gorgon's plans. All Wolverine did was kill many people, including Elsbeth, who Wolverine had saved as she was already doomed. He emphasized that those Wolverine killed welcomed death, seeing it as a reward. As Gorgon grew nastier, he used his powers to dig into Wolverine's psyche, bringing forth memories of the horrors Wolverine had inflicted on others. Gorgon reminded him that Wolverine was cursed, killing everything he ever touched. Wolverine questioned himself, then why couldn't he kill Gorgon? As Gorgon lifted Wolverine up, he dug out the memories of all the people who were close to Wolverine, but were now dead, like Mariko and Northstar. Then he reminded Wolverine about Rikuto, the little boy who had died so easily so that Wolverine could be captured. Saying this, Gorgon opened his shades, his eyes glowing. He was about to turn Wolverine to stone. And then there was a sound. Snicked. Wolverine had popped open his adamantium claws and reflected Gorgon's Medusa sight back at him. He looked into his own eyes and was turned to stone. Wolverine said, "Kiss it goodbye, freak," and with one punch broke Gorgon into pieces. S.H.I.E.L.D. choppers swarmed overhead. Gorgon was down, and the immediate threat was over. But Wolverine was clearly in rough shape, with his guts spilling out and struggling to heal. Spider-Man arrived, expressing concern for Wolverine's condition and questioning what had happened. Wolverine, though heavily injured, brushed off Spider-Man's concerns and said that he could take care of himself, even joking about his liver already regenerating. Despite his wounds, Wolverine told Spider-Man to pass a message to Fury that he was sorry, but things weren't over yet. From the S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ, Nick Fury recorded a message for Kitty Pryde. He started by apologizing for any glitches, explaining that his voice recognition system was still adjusting due to some recent injuries. He informed Kitty that Elektra had survived the New York incident, but had since disappeared, with rumors suggesting she was restarting the Hand in Eastern Europe. S.H.I.E.L.D. had neutralized Von Strucker's wife, but he doubted this would end the terrorist activity. He updated her about the Gorgon's defeat, noting that although their financier was eliminated, others quickly took their place. He expressed condolences for Northstar, but lied to her that his body had never been recovered after being taken by the Hand. Most concerning for Fury was Wolverine's disappearance. Wolverine had been off the radar for 11 weeks, leaving behind a trail of 1,800 corpses from Jersey to Japan as he seemingly searched for something. Fury made it clear that Wolverine's actions were causing problems. The S.H.I.E.L.D. had been working hard to keep his killing spree out of the news. Finally, Fury asked Kitty to inform Wolverine that he owed Fury a phone call whenever he reappeared. He called Wolverine a crazy little psychopath and wondered what exactly he was searching for. In Japan, on a hilltop, on a rainy day, Wolverine brought Ichiro and his wife to the place where Rikuto was buried. As they held themselves and broke down into tears, Wolverine asked for their forgiveness and stood and watched from afar. What if Wolverine, enemy of the state? Shadowcat stood face to face with Wolverine, pleading with him, desperately trying to remind him of who he truly was. Blood dripped from Wolverine's claws. Inwardly, she mourned the fact that it had come to this. Others had warned her that reasoning with him would be futile, but she believed she was different, his little angel who he'd never harm. 7 hours earlier, the X-Men's Blackbird jet sliced through the night sky, carrying a team focused on confronting an imminent danger. During the flight, someone turned to Captain America, frustrated with S.H.I.E.L.'s secrecy, and asked for clarity on their mission. In response, Captain America displayed blueprints of a building on a monitor, explaining that keeping the mission confidential was crucial to prevent Hydra from discovering their base or jeopardizing their objectives if anyone were captured. Their conversation was interrupted by Nick Fury, who appeared on the screen and made it clear that their operation revolved entirely around Wolverine. Captain America, Magneto, the Invisible Woman, and Shadowcat were gathered around the monitor as Fury outlined the situation. Although Hydra and the Hand were their primary enemies, Wolverine's alliance with them had led to devastating losses. The mission was simple: capture Wolverine and, if possible, deprogram him, which could pave the way to saving other Hydra victims. Captain America emphasized that each team member had been carefully selected for this mission, urging everyone to stick to the plan for their best chance of success. Magneto, with a hint of cynicism, remarked that their selection was likely due to the fact that they were still alive, to which Captain America countered that survival depended on their cooperation. The plan was to divide and conquer, isolating Wolverine from Hydra, who had used him to bring down other heroes. For 6 months, the destruction caused by Hydra's implants in Wolverine was evident in the trail of fallen heroes he left behind. One such victim was Spider-Man, who had initially gained the upper hand against Wolverine by webbing him to a wall, but Wolverine was teleported behind him, delivering a fatal blow. Hydra's ambitions for world domination were terrifying on their own, but with Wolverine's involvement, their threat grew exponentially. Fury continued the briefing, stressing that the secrecy of their location was meant to prevent the catastrophic mistakes that had occurred in Washington, D.C., which had drawn severe criticism from Homeland Security. Shadowcat remembered witnessing the chaos unfold on live television. Iron Fist battling Wolverine outside the White House, as the bodies of fallen bodyguards lay scattered around them. When Hand ninjas joined the fray, Luke Cage confronted Wolverine, accusing him of crossing a line. Despite Cage's determination, Wolverine ultimately overpowered and killed him, leaving Iron Fist horrified by the sight. Reflecting on Luke Cage's sacrifice to protect the president, Shadowcat noted Captain America's personal connection to the fallen heroes. However, Captain America was now confined to a wheelchair, having lost his left hand and leg. He mentioned that S.H.I.E.L.D. had bionic replacements ready for him once the mission was over. Shadowcat admired his resolve, even as she doubted her own ability to show the same strength. When Captain America asked if she was committed, she assured him she was, though internally her confidence wavered. As she began to question the plan's contingencies, Magneto cut her off, arguing that Wolverine was too far gone to be saved. Captain America acknowledged Magneto's pain over losing his son, but insisted they try containment first before resorting to more extreme measures. As the Blackbird approached a remote island, the team noticed a massive dome rising above the dense jungle. Captain America informed them that this would be their temporary base, supplied with provisions by S.H.I.E.L.D. Inside, he cautioned them against getting comfortable, explaining that Fury had been feeding Hydra false information to lure them into an attack, with Wolverine in tow. When Shadowcat asked what made the base so special, Captain America pointed out its robust construction, high-impact cement and ultra-grade titanium, with only one way in and out. Magneto questioned whether it could truly contain Wolverine, and though Captain America hesitated briefly, he then instructed everyone to prepare for the mission. Although they had 20 minutes to get ready, the team was back in 10, displaying their urgency. Captain America went over the base's layout, highlighting that Hydra had no intel on the facility, which meant they couldn't teleport Wolverine inside. Instead, he'd be funneled through a fortified hallway where Shadowcat would seal him in by closing titanium doors before phasing through to join the others. The Invisible Woman was responsible for restraining him, while Magneto would generate an electromagnetic field to disrupt Hydra's teleportation capabilities. Captain America volunteered to be the bait, knowing that Hydra wouldn't leave any loose ends. Shadowcat realized that while the plan sounded solid, facing Wolverine would be anything but easy. Wolverine's lethal reputation was well earned, demonstrated in his rooftop battle with Moon Knight under the full moon. Moon Knight initially held his own, but Wolverine ultimately overpowered and killed him, promising that Hydra would revive him and reset his mind. Wolverine's brutal efficiency underscored the immense challenge the team faced. As the mission began, chaos quickly took hold. Alarms blared, signaling Wolverine's approach, and the team rushed to their positions. Magneto prepared the generator, waiting for Captain America's signal. Shadowcat phased into the tunnel to check for Wolverine, but saw nothing. The Invisible Woman warned her to stay alert, knowing Wolverine could strike from anywhere. Suddenly, Wolverine's claws burst through the floor, impaling Sue's feet and sending her crashing down as he emerged. Magneto urged immediate action, but Captain America struggled to regain control, shouting orders and trying to distract Wolverine. Despite her injuries, Sue managed to encase Wolverine's head in a force field, cutting off his air supply. In a gruesome move, Wolverine slashed his own throat to create an airway. Continuing his assault, Captain America ordered Magneto to secure the base's upper and lower levels, astonished by Wolverine's unexpected tunneling entrance. Wolverine took advantage of the chaos, overpowering Sue and delivering a fatal strike to her head. As Captain America reeled in shock, Magneto attempted to intervene, but Wolverine teleported behind him and struck him down with a lethal blow to the chest. Shadowcat had hoped their meticulously crafted plan would work, believing that Sue could contain Wolverine. But now, with most of the team fallen, Wolverine taunted Captain America, questioning what backup plans they had. As Wolverine lunged, Shadowcat phased herself and Captain America, desperately trying to protect him. Wolverine continued his relentless attack, slashing at Captain America as he phased in and out of Shadowcat's grasp. Seizing a moment of opportunity, Captain America hurled his shield, forcing Shadowcat to let him go so he could land a punch on Wolverine. The shield struck Wolverine from behind, leaving him momentarily dazed. Captain America urged Shadowcat to do what was necessary, then turned to face Wolverine once more. Tragically, Wolverine regained the upper hand, delivering a fatal blow to Captain America's head. The rest of her allies fallen, Shadowcat remained phased as Wolverine approached her. She pleaded with him to seek help, offering to contact Fury, but Wolverine coldly reminded her that she couldn't operate any devices while in her intangible state. He mocked her, suggesting they reminisce while he waited for her to tire or become vulnerable, taunting her that he could track her anywhere on the island. Desperate, she questioned what Hydra had done to erase his memories of her, recounting the horrors he'd committed, including using her as a shield during his attack on Northstar, leading to Northstar's death instead of hers. She remembered their bond, how he'd become like a brother to her. Wolverine dismissed her pleas, boasting about his enhanced abilities and challenging her to fight back. Mustering her courage, Shadowcat struck, phasing her hand into his skull even as he retaliated by slicing it off. Clutching her injured arm, she expressed sorrow for what she had to do. Wolverine collapsed, his face twisted by the damage she'd inflicted. In the aftermath, Shadowcat hoped that if Wolverine ever recovered and his adamantium skull was repaired, he wouldn't remember the horrors he'd caused or the painful choice she'd made. The recording ended, and a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent confirmed that this was exactly how they'd found Kitty Pryde. Nick Fury emphasized that this was how she'd been discovered. Elektra noted that such actions were not part of standard training, to which Fury replied that war forces people to do extreme things. Elektra asked if Shadowcat had known her role all along, suggesting that she'd been the ultimate backup plan. Fury acknowledged Kitty's intelligence, implying she was aware of her role and simply had to come to terms with it. All-new Wolverine, enemy of the state. After a mysterious package arrived containing a test tube marked Trigger 42, it became clear to Laura Kinney that her apartment was no longer a safe haven. With danger closing in, she swiftly decided to relocate. Gathering Gabby and Jonathan, she led them to one of Logan's old safe houses, a secluded cabin far from prying eyes. But the sense of security was fleeting. The lights went out suddenly, triggering Laura's instincts to investigate. She set off toward the nearby town of Dalesville, hoping to uncover some answers. At a gas station on Dalesville's outskirts, Laura questioned the owner about the blackout. However, the situation quickly turned deadly. A fleet of water bombers suddenly appeared overhead, and before anyone could react, they dispersed the trigger scent over the town, a scent specifically designed to turn Laura into a lethal weapon. The potent chemical spread rapidly, and when Laura regained consciousness, she found the town eerily quiet and lifeless. All of Dalesville's residents were dead. Soon after, a S.H.I.E.L.D. team led by Nick Fury arrived on the scene, suspecting Wolverine's involvement and arresting him. Fury, after learning about the water bombers, dispatched fighter jets to intercept them. However, the planes were shot down by a flying fortress bearing Madripoor's flag before they could engage. Recognizing the potential for an international crisis, Fury chose not to pursue the attackers, giving Laura the chance she needed to flee. Now on the run, Laura reconnected with Gabby, managing to slip past S.H.I.E.L.D.'s efforts to contain them. Desperate need of an escape route, Laura reached out to Ash, a pirate captain whose life she'd previously spared. Ash agreed to help, offering to take Laura and Gabby to Madripoor. However, Laura's trust was betrayed. Ash was secretly working for Kimura, Laura's relentless tormentor. As the ship neared Madripoor, Laura's suspicions grew. Instead of docking, the ship remained at a distance, prompting Laura to use her heightened senses to investigate. What she discovered was horrifying. The ship's cargo was filled with enslaved children. Enraged, Laura confronted Ash, and in a swift act of retribution, severed Ash's hand. But before Laura could proceed further, Bellona, Roughhouse, and Kimura's other henchmen arrived. They captured Laura, ordering Roughhouse to return the children and Gabby to the States, while Laura was taken to face Kimura. Gabby, however, proved resourceful beyond expectations. She managed to escape from the ship and contacted Angel, a hero displaced in time. Angel responded quickly, bringing Gambit and a past version of Jean Grey along for support. As they prepared to rescue Laura, Kimura unleashed Wolverine on Tiger. having tagged Tiger with the deadly trigger scent. In the ensuing chaos, Laura fought against both her programming and Tiger's security forces, destroying Tiger's life model decoy. Just before she could deliver a fatal blow, Gambit intervened, stopping her from killing anyone. With the immediate threat neutralized, Laura was brought to Tiger's safe house. There, with Jean Grey's telepathic help, Laura confronted the programming that had controlled her for so long. Slowly, she began to free herself from the influence of the trigger scent. But before she could fully recover, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent summoned by Tiger arrived. Just as tensions began to escalate, Kimura's flying fortress launched a sudden attack. Amid the chaos, Tiger revealed a hidden asset, a prototype of the Model Prime Iron Man armor. She offered it to Laura, who accepted the suit. With its power, and alongside the combined forces of the X-Men and S.H.I.E.L.D., Laura led a counterattack against Kimura. In the climactic battle, Laura confronted and ultimately drowned her nemesis Kimura in the depths of Madripoor. With Kimura finally defeated, Bellona confessed to the massacre in Dalesville, revealing that she'd killed the townspeople after Wolverine had incapacitated himself to prevent further bloodshed. This revelation brought Laura a measure of closure. With this chapter of her life behind her, Laura decided it was time to return home, determined to face the unresolved issues with Debbie and Megan and begin rebuilding what was left of her world. Marvel's verdict: that's all for today, folks. If Wolverine or his family is brainwashed ever again and they go on a killing spree, rest assured that our channel will be there to cover it. Till then, keep liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please also let us know your thoughts in the comments section.